introduced Karen Jones. She is a HEET member down in South County, but we all travel the whole county, so she is located in the South County. She's going to speak to you about personal, family, and small pet preparedness. She is going to go ahead and hand it over to Karen.
So this is the reason I got involved with HEET. This is Princess. This is my almost 23-year-old Paint, and that's my new horse Kiwi. So I love my horses. Part of the reason I'm talking to you guys today about emergency preparedness is that my day job, which is how I support these two, because if I don't work, they don't eat. I do emergency preparedness for care facilities. I run the Ombudsman program in San Luis Obispo County. We're part of the emergency plan up there. So typically I do a lot of these trainings for people in care facilities and about, planning, but planning's the same whether you're doing critters or not critters. So anyway, so those are my girls. And that's truly how Princess usually looks about Kiwi. She's so annoyed with having a 6-year-old around. One day, the 6-year-old was actually lunging around her like my other horse had her on a line. She was like, "Stop it!" She was very unimpressed with the 6-year-old. Okay, so these are the reasons you plan for emergencies. Now, down here in Santa Barbara County, you don't have Diablo Canyon, but I guarantee you, if you think the roads are bad any time of the week, if Diablo Canyon has a problem, your roads will be horrifically impacted by everyone trying to get out of San Luis County. In fact, the Santa Maria Fairgrounds is one of the evacuation locations for awful lot of people coming out of there. So Santa Maria is going to be in big trouble. And for horses, there's a big problem with nuclear or other types of events. If they get contaminated, they may not be able to travel anymore if you get radioactive. So anyway, so there's all these different things. That's actually the Alamo fire. Julie and I went out and pulled a couple of horses out of there that morning that it started. That was actually the morning. It kind of looked like Armageddon. It was just crazy. And then the worst thing, which doesn't require an emergency response from horse people, but it could cause trouble because, my horses are important, but chocolate's also very important. So the first thing with any emergency, no matter what it is you have to get air into your brain because you're going to have to think. So about 10 years ago when I first started working with the County of San Luis Obispo with my office, we do mock drills. Every other year the Nuclear Regulatory Commission requires Diablo Canyon and all of San Luis County emergency folks to do a drill that's evaluated by the NRC. And they sound the alarms or the sirens that we have in San Luis County all the time, but when you're sitting in a room full of emergency planners and they go, "We're sounding the alarms in Los Osos to evacuate," even though it's not real, there's no blood flow going. It's in your feet, and you're thinking, "Oh my gosh," and you start thinking, "What would you do?" So what you have to do first is always breathe. Someone knocks on your door, says, "Get out now," take a deep breath, because otherwise you're going to end up, when you're grabbing things from your house to figure out what you need, you're going to grab a box of tissues and leave your passport behind. You can get more tissues elsewhere, but your brain isn't thinking then. Your fight or flight's coming on. So if you can breathe, you can get the fight or flight down and start thinking rationally. So I'm not going to ask you guys if you have your personal plans or not, because people will lie or they'll be embarrassed or whatever. And I am really good at guilting people, but I'm not going to do that to you guys. Well, okay, I totally will, but not like that, obviously. So the important thing you have to do first is have your plans. I know Stacy mentioned this also. If you do not have a personal plan, what happens if there's an emergency right now? What are you guys going to do? What are you going to grab? Where are you going to go? You're going to get in your car. Who are you going to call if something happens right here? If something happens with your family, whether they live with you or they've moved on in their lives, or maybe your kids have moved away, you may have other relatives or friends. What is your family plan? And your family can be whoever you consider family. It can be your best friend, your partner, whoever is your family. You have to have a plan for all those folks. Especially if you have someone who can't do much for themselves. Small children, elderly parents, people with disabilities, especially dementia, they're not probably going to help you too much. You've got to make sure you plan for that. The same with your pets and your home. So there's all these plans that you have to have. They're all really similar. It's not like it's a ton of work, but it's important to have all these different types of plans. And when you get your plan, you want to make sure you practice that. It's really easy to have a good plan, but if you don't practice it, you might not realize that it's not going to work. Like if your entire communication plan is based on cell phones, guess what? So is everyone else's, especially the ones who didn't have a plan. So if you have a cell phone plan, it may be out the window the minute the cell towers go down, and they will go down. In a power outage, cell towers are running off generators. When the fuel runs out, the cell tower runs out. You might be able to drive to another location where there's cell service, but that could be a big problem, especially if you don't keep at least a quarter of a tank of gas in your car. Have you guys, I think I may have this slide at the end of my project thing, but in Florida, when the hurricanes were coming, the gas lines were stretching. You could not get gas in Florida. And then you were on the road forever crawling, which uses up an awful lot of fuel. You have to keep gas in your car, or again, your evacuation plan's out the window. So practice your plan. In the back, I've got these little kind of business card size things. I can get more if anyone needs them, but it's really cool. Unlike a map, which you can never get back. You can fold this back up again, and this is what you can carry in your wallet. It's got your emergency family plan and a list of things to grab. So it's really important to have these plans, especially again if you have critters. So when you're building your kits, you don't have to have a big bag. This is the one I carry in my car. I have a backpack for me, talk about. I also carry a kit like this. In here I've got a bucket with a bag of grain in it, and in case I come across a loose horse. You know, it's rural here, we get loose horses. I also have a lead rope halter. It's a rope halter with a lead rope. I have a dog catching thing. The other thing is, how many of you guys have ever seen a loose dog on the road and you call to it? They never come to you, right? Ever? They will if you have cat food. Every cat knows what that sound is, or every dog, even if they don't live with cats. So I've also got these treats. No dog likes these treats, I was discovered. I got to test out this kit. I was actually moving it from my car to my truck, and some neighbors had this really cute pit bull, and it was like loose, and it had that, you know, when pit bulls smile, you know the world is a good place, and it was love and life, like, I'm free, and it runs right past me, and I'm calling it, but he's free, and I offer him that treat, and he smells it, like he's right there, and I don't want to reach and grab, because scare him, and he's like, yeah, no, which is why I now carry cat food, because I could not catch the pit bull, because he was not having the crunchy treats. So your emergency kit should be stuff you use. When you buy emergency food for your home or for your vehicle, if you don't eat fish, don't buy dried salmon. You know, an emergency is bad enough if you don't have chocolate, but it's especially bad if you don't eat the food that you normally get. So if you're not really a nuts and raisins kind of a person and you fill your bag up with nuts and raisins because, hey, they store well, you're going to be a hungry mungry and extra grumpy. So you want to make sure you buy food that is safe and that, you know, will last, but you also want it to be stuff you will incorporate back into your normal eating stuff. I would also advise for your family plan, if you don't have a lot of electricity or gas, you know, every time there's an emergency, I have this huge urge to go to Costco and buy those giant bags of dried beans and rice. I just feel like if I had that, I would feel good. Like I would know I was prepared. Do you know how much fuel and water it takes to make dried beans and rice into anything you could eat? A lot. And you have to have the pan, and it will use a whole thing of propane, the little can. So maybe something it heats up faster or doesn't need heat at all. So kind of think about that when you're doing stuff. The other thing with your plan is make sure that your supplies are where you can get to them. I have a friend of mine who works in the Ombudsman program down here in Santa Barbara County. We drive to meetings all the time, you know, around the counties, and she always rides with me, and I was telling her about my kits and everything, so she went out and bought this huge lockery kind of thing, and she's got a big table, like the size of 3 of these together, in her dining room. She goes, I put it under there, and I was like, well, what is your plan for earthquakes? She goes, well, we go under the table if there's an earthquake, and I said, well, which of your kids are you sacrificing for the emergency supply? There's not room for everybody, sorry, we're keeping the chocolate. So, you know, I kind of convinced her, you want to put your big emergency thing maybe at the front of your garage. They have the aluminum garage door that goes up. You can always bust through that if you have to with tools. But if it's near the front, your garage collapses a little bit, you can still get to it. It's not buried under, you know, all your Christmas stuff and other holiday, you know, decorations. So make sure you've got things. In your let me see, I don't have my PowerPoint printed. I do, but, okay. So anyway, I lost the printed one. It's somewhere in all this stuff. See, emergencies. So part of your car kit, you don't have to carry something like that, which, like I said, I've got a bucket and a lead rope for the horse. I've got the thing for the dog. But the bag itself, it's got a zip top. I can put a cat in there. Not a happy cat, mind you. But if I find a cat, I can take the other stuff out, especially the bucket. It takes up a lot of room, and put a cat in there. I also have a flashlight in there, and I also have an emergency backup battery for my cell phone, because at any given time, if I'm listening to an audiobook, I may or may not have much battery left. And again, my cell phone is part of my emergency plan, but I want to be able to use it for a long period of time. So this is heavy. You're all welcome to test it out. I also have a backpack, which I didn't bring because y'all know what a backpack looks like, and it's, you don't need that kind of show and tell. But if I have to leave my car and walk for a long time or live out of that backpack, what am I going to have in there? What do I really need, and how much weight can I carry for very long? You can get those little string backpacks that they use for like sports, but trust me, your shoulders will hate you, and then they will leave you altogether in no time at all. First aid supplies are kind of number one, but one of the things that I always recommend you have is, these are those emergency blankets. It really does work. You will look like a baked potato and people will laugh at you, but you'll be warm while they're laughing at you, and they won't be. So they take up no room, they weigh nothing. When this unravels, it's just huge. It's a big emergency blanket. You can wrap it around everybody. And again, I especially recommend this like in a bag near your front door. Not that you have to decorate with these, but if you have to evacuate in the middle of the night and you don't have time to grab warm clothes, it may not be back east where they're really suffering, but these things will keep people warm. And also a mask of some kind. This is just a regular mask, but if it's smoke, as we all got to see with the Thomas Fire, even in our area, we were wearing masks because in Napomo, it was snowing one day. We woke up and the world had ended. It was just black and awful. So you want to make sure you've got some things that are in your backpack that you can use. But again, you also want to make sure you've got contact lenses, eyeglasses, if you have medication that can store. But you can't overdo it, because unless you're going to build a backpack that you can carry like to go hiking in the Alps, it's not going to work. So things that are comfortable for you, but you can live with, and as much as you can carry that isn't going to hurt you. So a few of the emergency items that you might want to have in your backpack. When I ride, I also do this. You bring a whistle. Because if you're out of breath, if you're harmed, you can usually use a whistle, even if you can't yell for help. But you also want one for your backpack, because if you're stuck in your car and you're yelling for help and nobody knows you're there, a whistle goes much further than your voice can. Bottled water, try to keep it out of the heat. And then the rest of these things are just some extra good things to have. A hard hat and some really good industrial gloves. If you have to move debris or be in a place where there may be some stuff falling, you want those things. The time to buy them is today, when you don't need them, when nobody around you needs them. Because if you wait until, oh my gosh, I need those things to go clean up or go move stuff, everybody's bought them, the shelves are empty. So one of the things, I'm not doing a trailer talk, but one of the things that I bought for my horse trailer, and it's out by the trailer demonstration, is I bought one of those jacks that you roll your trailer up onto so you can change the other tire. That was an awesome day. But then I got a lug wrench. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy. I have my own lug wrench. If my trailer breaks, if my tire goes down, I can totally change my own tire. I'd like not to, but I could. So, you want to have stuff that you could use well before you need it. So again, some things to keep in your car. I wear heels about this tall, really short work heels at work, but my work shoes are not something I want to walk around in for a very long time. So I always carry comfortable shoes. And of course, I don't always have socks on that are great for my other shoes. So I bring socks. But these are the kind of things you want to keep handy in your vehicle, even if you're not leaving your vehicle. And then for your home kit, there's a lot of information out there about the home kits. If you're ordered to shelter in place, you want to make sure you have Visqueen, which I did not know how that is spelled. I thought it was spelled Visqueen with an L, but I looked it up on Google, because Google knows everything, and unless you spell it wrong, and then it really doesn't know. But you need visqueen and duct tape so you can cover up windows, doors, heater, air conditioning vents, that kind of stuff. That's for if a tanker truck goes over and there's a toxic plume heading towards you or something like that, that you may need to like make sure you're in a small room that doesn't have any access to the outside. And then, again, make sure you're storing your things where you can find it. I highly recommend big plastic garbage bag or cans, or even metal ones are better, because critters. I had a grain bin that was Rubbermaid. It was awesome, lasted for years, and we had a bad rodent year a couple years ago, and they just kept eating up through the bottom, darn things. So I had to get a new metal one. But they can't chew through that. With your plans, you need your communication plan. I highly recommend including written messages in your plan. So leave a note on your door, we're at location 2. If you don't feel safe letting everyone know location 2 is your mom's house at this address, then if everyone knows the plan, they know location 2 is here. Text messages often work longer than cell phone calls because they don't use as much of the bandwidth. So you can sometimes text when you can't call. If you have a landline, almost nobody still has. My mom does. And she still calls me or complains about all the weird calls she gets. I'm like, get rid of the landline, Mom. Nobody will call and try to sell you, resorts in some place that doesn't exist. Or you won't win a lottery you didn't enter. But anyway, if you do have a landline and you have cordless phones, they're electricity powered. You need electricity for them. Make sure you have the old style princess type phones where it's actually a cord that runs into the phone and doesn't need any power. So just keep one of those around. They're harder to find these days, but they're still out there. You may be able to use internet, but again, those require electricity most of the time, even if you're using it off your phone. And then ham radio, the HEET people are really pushing to, everyone should be on a ham radio. It is inexpensive, it's really easy to do. I'm not ham operating yet, but I plan to be. And it is inexpensive, but again, there's no confidentiality. So we were listening to it one time going out to an event, and it was kind of like, whoa, I can't believe these people are saying these things. So watch what you say if you get ham radio. Everybody else may hear it. Again, your communication plan, make sure you check in. Where are you going to check in at? Red Cross has their Safe and Well website. Please register that. If you're in an area that's like with the mudslides, that's the problem. People don't know who's safe, who's not. They may have gone to this shelter or that shelter. If you check in on that, everyone knows you're safe and they quit looking for you, which means they're not using valuable resources they could use to actually look for lost people. Facebook does some stuff too. You can always check in on Facebook, but make sure you're sharing your communication plan with people. If they don't know your plan, if you can't call me, do this. If you can't do this, do that. Part of our plan, sometimes local lines don't work, but you can call long distance. So I have a niece in Texas and my mom's friend in Pennsylvania. They've got a list of our family members. That's who we all call if you can't use local phones. Because that way, they can compare themselves because they're not in an emergency zone. Okay, we heard from these 5 people, those 7 people, whoever it might be, and then they know that everyone's checked in. Your shelter-in-place plan, basically, again, you're either going to be told to stay indoors or stay in your home, don't go out. And if it's protective, then you have to cover things. We don't typically have those little, like, hurricane things here, tornado things, but this is what covering up your windows are. If you're not familiar with how to use duct tape well, or if it's slightly wet, you might want to be thinking other types of tape, although I hate to say duct tape would ever fail, because I love duct tape. You can fix anything with duct tape and baling twine. Baling twine's like the gift from the horse people. Again, your sheltering plan, make sure everyone knows where to go. If you've got people who are home alone and don't know that the closet in the master bedroom is your shelter location for protective shelter, make sure everyone knows that and practice with it. And I also highly recommend bring stuff to do, because if you are told to shelter in your home for days on end and we're all really busy people doing active outside things, we will slowly go insane. So bring some stuff to do, because just picking on each other, that's a bad habit. People get really tired of that and they won't shelter with you anymore. Your evacuation plan, one of the problems we had with care facilities in San Luis County is their evacuation plan would be to evacuate to the facility right next door, which is awesome if, say, your water heater breaks. if there's a Thomas fire heading towards you at 30 miles an hour, good chance the next facility needs to evacuate also. So same with houses. We often think, well, I'll just go to my neighbor's house. Well, but your neighbor's house is sailing down the street isn't helpful. So make sure you have 3 alternatives for your evacuation plan, and again, that everyone knows this. So one's near your house for a little event, not a big deal. 20 miles away-ish, if you, so you have a secondary location. And 60 miles away, just so you're out of harm's way, out of the bad air, whatever it might be. And again, have some agreements before you go. If it's not going to be a Red Cross shelter, make sure your friends know you're showing up. Again, I know it's a comparison, but in care facilities, an awful lot of the care facilities plan to go to the nearest hospital, which is where all the broken, sick people were planning to go to. So the hospitals don't have room for people. So you might find out that your friend that you thought was going to be your go-to has already agreed to take in 5 other families, and they'll be stacking people. So probably want to really talk about people get those agreements, especially with your pets. One of the amazing things with Santa Barbara County Animal Services during the Alamo fire, we were all sitting in the area, at the Elks Rodeo lot area where we'd evacuated some horses to. We were waiting for permission to go pull more horses. And so we're watching this direction where the Alamo fire is the smoke is just taking over the world on this side. And we look over here and I was like, what is that? It's the Whittier fire starting up. We're watching Armageddon this way, and all of a sudden, no, you're kidding. It's just a bad joke. How could this be happening? So, one of the people from Animal Services, she's just sitting there all calm. She goes, oh yeah, that's where my house is. And she's sitting there she's drinking her tea or whatever, and she's all calm, and we're like, I want to go paste for you. She goes, no, my neighbor's got it. He knows where the dog food is. He knows where the dogs are. I have him feed the dogs once a week. The leashes are right by the door. He's already going to get them. It's fine. And we're like, are you sure you don't want to pace? Something? No, she's just calm because she's so prepared. So make sure you're preparing with your critters too, but also make sure if you're evacuating that where you're going will give you permission to bring your small animals, because if they won't, it's a bad time when you're evacuating to find out that you need a new place. Again, we just cannot say this enough. What we found out in Montecito, voluntary zones aren't really so voluntary sometimes. So leave. If emergency planners are saying, hey, you might want to think about leaving, or you're in a voluntary zone, what they really mean is get out. But we don't want to scare you. We don't want to cause too much trouble because people hate to evacuate. But what they really mean is please get out. It's not safe. So leave when there's voluntary, even if it's a nuisance and a half to be out of your home. It really is not comfortable not to be in your own home. I'm a total homebody. I'm only good for 3 days away on vacation. Then I'm like, I need to go see my horses. But if you don't have much time, you'll have less time if you don't leave early. And one of the things I really recommend is when you're thinking about your stuff, write down all the things that are critically important to take with you in an emergency. If you've got 1 minute, you've got time to put some clothes on and grab your ID, maybe some money, and get out. If you've got 5 minutes, what are you going to do? If you've got 20 minutes to get out, what are you going to take? Because again, I've been talking to a lot of people who've been evacuated, and they truly do. They'll grab a box of Kleenex and leave a priceless photo that they can't replace from their parents right next to it, because they're just not thinking. So if you make a list and hand it out, you go grab those 5 things, you go grab those 5 things, so much easier than trying to do it when you're panicking. And again, keep your vehicle with gas in it. If you have a truck that you plan to use for your horses, half a tank at all times. If I don't put my truck really only pulls my horse trailer. I don't put it back in the driveway unless it's got a full tank, even if it's down to only a quarter, 3/4 of a tank, because I don't know if I'm going to get called out. And my car, I try to keep it at least a quarter of a tank at all times, because again, if you need gas and there's an emergency, so does everyone else. And again, with your emergency plan, I'm all happy about a lug wrench, but I always know that I don't really know how to turn off my utilities. But the gas company would happily tell you, please don't turn off your utilities unless you're told to. If you mess with your gas and it turns out you didn't need to, you turn it off, great, you're safe. But the problem is you might not get it back on for a month because everyone else turned it off, and your individual house is not anyone's priority. So make sure you talk to the utility companies before you turn off any utilities. And then also meet your neighbors. In the Alamo fire, the crazy, amazing thing to me was how many people didn't evacuate from Tepesquay Canyon. You know, we were pulling horses out, but we're driving past people who are like all casual, they're feeding their horses like any other day, and there's this big fire roaring down the hill at them. They're like, no big deal. And we're like, this is weird. We've got more room in the trailer. We could just park a few of them in here. But it turned out that in Tepesquay Canyon, because fire is such a problem, they've all got nice, safe areas. That's why a lot of houses were lost. And they have this big plan for the whole community. It was amazing how much help they did. So people who left knew that their other neighbors were going to take care of their critters and their homes. So if you meet your neighbors, like if they're drug dealing weird people, maybe don't give them the key to your house. Just a thought. But if they're nice people and you can trust them, make a plan. I can't get back because I'm at work and now our area is closed off. Will you get my critters for me? And do the same for each other. So this is my summary. Again, make your kits. I have some information on here. Is a part of it shows you what items to take, and I've made some extra copies of it. So if we run out of the folding things, you can grab this. It's in the back on the HEET table. And all the phone numbers on this little fold-out thing are for San Luis County. They're from San Luis County Health Agency, but you can just, if you're in Santa Barbara County or some other county, you can get that same information in your area. And ask for help if you need it. I'm going to be around. All of the speakers are going to be around for the day, so we're happy to help. And that's the gas lines, or that's the driving out lines in the Florida hurricanes. And that's the gas lines. Like, there wasn't going to be much gas left. So anyway, any questions? The comment was, you know, one of the ways you can save your photos so you don't have to constantly pull them off your walls is to take photos with your camera and then upload them to the cloud. And I actually have a relative who lives in Mariposa, and you know they have big fire problems there too, especially with the dead trees. So she has a backup drive. She backs up all of her photos to her computer. She has an external backup drive, and she leaves one copy of that in a safe deposit box with all their important papers. And then she alternates, so she backs up and switches them out. That way, and one of the things she did with the stuff that's not digital already, you know, like the photos of my horses are on my phone, is take them down and get quality digital photo copies of them made so they're just the same quality, because some phones are great, but some are not. But you can keep an awful lot of stuff that way.